And here we are. So, without further ado, I will hand it over to Tara, who has a really great presentation and sort of interactive workshop about creating authentic connections. Here she is.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. It's so nice to see so many faces and so many familiar faces. So I'm an artist and a songwriter. I also have a record label called Willow Sound Records, and I also run an educational program called The Syndicate, which is all about empowering and educating independent music creators on how to understand themselves as a business and as an entrepreneur and how to make a sustainable living with music, because it is difficult, but it is possible. So that's my day-to-day work. Mitch is part of our crew. He's over at Willow Sound and came to Willow from the Syndicate. And and if you guys would like to come say hi during FMO, my Willow will be showcasing our artists at 2 o'clock on Friday in the Grand Ballroom. So come say hi, and you get to hear Mitch sing too, because he's going to be showcased. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about, so I was really excited when Mel reached out and came up with this, because the networking thing is difficult for a lot of people. It's really challenging. For some people, it causes a lot of anxiety. They're not really sure how to do it, what it is, and how to have anything effective come out of it. And when I was coming up as an artist, I remember feeling really anxious. I remember feeling really intimidated by industry people and thinking, kind of avoiding the networking thing, because I am a little shy, and also too, I didn't like the feeling. I didn't like the way that it made me feel. I felt really unsure of myself, and I felt very, like I said, intimidated, very intimidated. What I've learned over the years is that industry people, you're all industry people. We are all industry people. There is no us and them. This illusion that there are people sort of in power and people without power is really that. It's an illusion. And so once I figured that out, I had a bit more confidence, and just built my skill in networking, also in different industries, because my background is in business in more than one industry. And networking is the same no matter what industry you're working in. So I'm just going to go through a few points here, but I would very much like this to be a discussion. I don't really want to talk at you for the rest of the hour. I would just really love to hear your thoughts and anything that you want to contribute to what we're offering here today, and really make sure that you leave here today with some concrete tools and a clarity on how to make the most of networking at the conference. So networking, what is it? It's very simple. Networking is connecting. It's not any more complicated than that. That's really what the whole point of networking is. It's making professional connections with others in your industry for all kinds of reasons. So we are better with a strong network of people for opportunity, but also support. And team always moves us forward more than us alone. So networking really is just growing that whole connection, your whole sort of web of people that you can go to for advice, for mentorship, for guidance, for help, for support, for co-creating, for bouncing ideas off of, and for opening doors, which is usually what people focus networking on, is for like, who can open doors for me? Who can help me? Who can do something for me? Which is usually the first step in the wrong way of networking, because networking is much more about what you bring to the table instead of what can this person do for me. And so what I see mostly is artists sort of going off the path, if you will, when they go into a networking situation and they think, okay, well, that person, runs a label, so they can, solve all my problems, with money and distribution if I get that person's attention, or if I, that person's in publishing, so that person can get my music in sync and I'll make some money. So it is important to know, who you're connecting with and what they can do, but it is way more important to understand what you bring to the table if you really want to make a successful connection and an authentic connection. Now, we all know in the music business, not everything is authentic. We work in an industry that relies very much on smoke and mirrors. We work in entertainment, and so there is an element of that within sort of the artistic part of what we do. But in the connections with people, there really shouldn't be any smoke and mirrors or inauthenticity, because it doesn't last. And really, when you're connecting with somebody in a networking situation, it's really no different than in everyday life. When you're meeting people in any scenario, social scenario, the only real difference would be that the topic of conversation or focus is on the industry or industry speak. But from a heart space and a head space, it's still, connection is still the same no matter where you are. It's just human to human, and being very authentic requires vulnerability. It requires you to be vulnerable and to really know yourself, which I think is the hardest part for most artists when they're learning how to network authentically. Is really knowing yourself and not being afraid to show who you are, and having confidence in the person that you are and the artist that you are. So, what is the point of networking? Well, you are an artist or music creator, assuming everybody here is. And if you want to make a living using that skill, then you are in business, whether you like those words or not. Traditionally, there's a bit of push and pull with language around the music and arts and business and corporate. And there's often this tension between the two. And it's like you'll hear, like phrases like, well, I'm not going to sell out, this kind of sort of culture around, people who make music. And there isn't really a big, huge distance between sort of business and corporate, and music and art. They really don't have to be in opposition to one another. Because if you want to make a living with your music, you have to understand the basic fundamentals of how business works. Because at the core, you are selling your music, your shows, your merch, because you're selling it simply because there's an exchange of money. You are receiving money for the thing that you are creating and bringing into the world. And because you're taking money for it doesn't devalue what you're doing. So the first thing to get friendly with or to understand is that this is business, and that's not a bad thing. And business is the way that our world moves, and it's how the economy functions, and it's how you're going to make a sustainable living as an artist at whatever level that is for you. So the first thing is to really become friends with the word business, because if you are making money with your music, then you are in business. The other thing to really sort of dial into or focus on is your network is your net worth. I remember hearing that and thinking, I love that phrase. Your network is your net worth. The more people you are connected to, the more opportunity you have. The more opportunity you have, the more money you can make. So it's really good to remember that your network and your net worth go hand in hand. So the ability to reach more people with your music and to generate more income is directly connected to your network. And so business is not a difficult thing to understand, even though for some, especially as artists, we kind of shut down and go, oh God, I don't want to deal with the business stuff. I don't want to think about, money. And it's usually a stressor, especially for independent artists, because we're always out of cash. And so we kind of shut down. But business really is just about people, okay? And to be successful in business, you just have to understand people. And the best way to understand people is to understand yourself. Because the more you understand yourself and the more you know who you are as a person, the more understanding and compassion you have for others, and the more you get a deeper level of understanding of how people work. And business is just always about people. No matter what you're selling, it's just always about people. So to be successful at this, you really have to know who you are, okay? So what are your core values? What matters to you? Start asking those questions of yourself. Why are you going to this conference? What's your why? What is your hope and your outcome? What's your hopeful outcome of this conference? What are you hoping will happen? Why are you choosing to spend life minutes, because we work in two currencies. We do spend money, but we also spend life minutes, and we don't get an infinite amount of life minutes. So why have you prioritized spending time and money on this conference? And that will really help you understand what some of your values are. There's a document that I'm going to send to you guys after this, and it has a link to help you define what your core values are. So that's a really important part of getting to know who you are and understanding yourself. Also, two, personalities, understanding your personality, because everybody networks and makes connections in different ways. We are not all the same. Even the very basics, like being an introvert or an extrovert. And I used to think that being an introvert or extrovert was connected to personality or shyness. And what I've come to understand is that being an introvert or extrovert has to do with how we recharge. So if we are an introvert, you can be an introvert and not be shy. It's just that being an introvert, when you're around a lot of people, that's not what charges you. It's not what gives you your energy. You get drained by being around a lot of people. So an introvert needs to be alone, reading a good book, having a cup of tea, meditating, whatever, an alone type of activity to recharge their social battery. An extrovert gets their battery recharged by being around people. They feel charged, they feel energized by being around people. So understanding yourself and understanding where on the spectrum you are between introvert and extrovert can also help you manage, and this touches into your nervous system too, with what you maybe experienced or talked about in the last session. It's understanding how to manage your well-being through the networking process, is understanding what you need based on personality traits. Okay, so the word authentic. The word authentic gets thrown around a lot these days, especially with social media. And we're all inundated with social media. Sadly, we have to use social media to do what we do. So authentic, what does it actually mean? Technically, it means put simply, authenticity means you're true to your own personality, your values, and your spirit, regardless of the pressure that you're under to act otherwise. You're honest with yourself and with others, and you take responsibility for your mistakes. Your values and ideals and actions align. They line up. So what you say is what you do, and that lines up with who you are. What I think is really relevant to the conference situation is that you're really authentic when you're in a situation where there's pressure to act otherwise, potentially. And that's what happens sometimes in conference settings, is that if we lack confidence in ourselves and who we are, we can bend or change under the pressure of that expectation, or thinking we need to be another way in order to be accepted, in order to be seen, in order to be successful in music, that we need to be something outside of ourselves or become something else. And really, authenticity is an inward journey. It's about discovering who we are and being brave enough to show that to the world under any circumstance, no matter where you are. So authenticity is really key to successful networking and making connections with people that will last. And when you're approaching somebody in a conference setting, let's say there's somebody, that you are perceiving as being in a position of power, in the sense that they can really affect your career or your opportunities. Say it's a festival buyer, and you're an artist and you just really need dates for 2023. So you'd be looking at that buyer and thinking, that person can solve a lot of problems for me. I just need to be seen and heard and understood by this person. So when you're looking at it through an authentic lens, you have a more balanced approach to it as well. And again, put your business hat on, because try to be that person. What is their life like? What is their job like? So imagine being a buyer. Imagine walking around these conferences and, looking at talent and trying to put together your show ideas and deciding who are you going to showcase and Who is your audience for your festival? What are they looking for? So part of being successful in networking is putting yourself in the shoes of other people and understanding from their perspective, what are they looking for? Because then you can really have an honest look at yourself and say, are you really a fit for that? Instead of coming at it from, I need dates, this is going to solve my problem, you can come at it from, am I really a fit? Am I a good product, if you will, or fit for this festival? Are my people there? Is my audience there? What do I bring to this festival? How will booking me elevate and help that buyer do their job? Do a really great job. How am I going to make them look great by signing me or booking me for those dates? So it's about shifting your focus to, how can I help this person do their job better or make them look good, as opposed to, how can this person help me? And by looking at that perspective, you can really, it helps to balance your approach, and really, it actually helps to sort of balance the power out, because when you have, and it makes it less unnerving to approach someone, because you feel confident in the knowing of what you bring to the table, which is so important. And it's a confident knowing, and not bragging, or not like having a huge ego, because just like in any of your day-to-day life, if you meet somebody at a coffee shop or at a store, or any interaction you have, if somebody brags a lot or has a very large ego, it doesn't really provide a space for real authentic connection, because it kind of can put you off a little bit. So when you have an honest knowing of what you can and can't do and what you bring to the table, it helps you with your networking, and it helps make it authentic. Okay, I'm just going to go through these 10 networking tips, and then we'll open it up for some questions here before we talk a little bit about the U factor. So networking tips, basic ones. Prepare. I cannot stress this enough. Prepare. Do your homework. Who's going to that conference? What delegates are going to be there? And based on where you're at right now in your career, with your own goals and your projections for 2023, the rest of 2022, what is it that you actually need? Like, is it an agent you're looking for? And do you really need that? Do you have something that they can book you for? Are you ready? Are you market ready? Are you export ready? Where would you want to be booked? So really do your homework and prepare and research the delegates, and really ask yourself before you go, who is it that I really don't want to miss the chance to meet or speak to? Okay, and come up with a plan. So who's your who? That's what that's about. So who are the people that you really want to connect with? And then what's your why? Why do you want to get that person's time? Why do you want to try to get their attention or make a connection? And why does it make sense in your whole plan? So who's your who and what's your why? And you can go to a conference and not have specific goals of speaking to certain people or certain delegates. You can also just go and network with the people. Like, I kind of do it this way too. Like, sometimes I have a plan, but sometimes I really like, I'm a big believer sort of in the flow of life, and just being sort of in, going with the flow. And I really believe the people that we're meant to connect with cross our paths. That's just how I live my life. And so I end up going to conferences sort of with the same mentality. I have a general idea of who it is that I'd like to see or talk to, but I also really trust in the flow of things. And it's funny because, and I'm sure Mel has these stories too, or many people would have these stories where, you just happen to get in the elevator with so-and-so, and it's somebody that you have wanted to talk to, and they just happen to be in the same elevator for those few floors. Or, you're walking out, you're leaving the gala dinner and you're going to the bathroom, and you happen to be walking in the hallway with somebody that, you've really wanted to talk to. There's like a rhythm to it all. So the trick is to be ready for those opportunities when they present themselves. How are you going to, speak to them, or what are you going to say, and how are you going to say it? So prepare, but also be a little go with the flow. Make a list of who's your who and what's your why. Okay. Present yourself well. This is really important. And it's not about clothing, although what you're wearing does communicate something about you. But when you meet people, and we haven't been peopling now for for a good 2 years, so this is a good skill to remember. A handshake goes a very, very long way, and I still remember my father teaching me this when I was really little, maybe 6 years old, and teaching me the importance of a handshake. Because if you know anything about body language, I studied body language for a little bit and really loved it. But the handshake communicates so much about us, which is why it's such an important thing in our culture, which is why it was so weird when we could not touch anybody for those 2 years. Like, the handshake is such, there is so much history behind that. There's so much power in that thing. When you shake someone's hand, make sure to look them in the eye. This is also very important. That is the first point of connection, and that says, hello, I am holding space for us right here. This matters to me. You're important to me. So eye contact and a good handshake is like half the deal. I'm telling you, it's everything. And not a made up handshake, but just a confident handshake just really communicates a lot about who you are. And good eye contact. So presenting yourself well is part of that. It's also sort of your emotional state as well. Just having your emotional state be very grounded and focused, and really listen and really paying attention to that person. Has anybody had the experience where you're talking with somebody and they're spending the whole time looking over your shoulder to see if there's somebody more important to talk to? Isn't that great? That's so fun. Those are the worst. So don't be that person ever. And no matter who has come up and and is shaking your hand, or meeting you, or if you're meeting somebody else, and if the person you're talking with is doing that, make a mental note, because that really says something about somebody's character. Now, sometimes we have to factor in sort of ADD, because that is a thing, and people do get distracted, and I'm finding it more now than ever. So, don't be too quick to judge. But if you feel like this person is always looking over your shoulder to see who else they can talk to, make a mental note, because that does tell you something about their personality. And it's okay for you to be choosy. Some people in the music industry, particularly, they will tolerate being, I mean, mistreated is a strong word, but they will tolerate being disrespected because they feel like they have no choice, that they have to tolerate the behavior because that person is in a position to affect their career in some way. And that's a personal choice for everybody to make. Touching on what Melanie said at the beginning was, things are changing, and it is great that they're changing. And I think that's one tiny little way it can change, is that, if you're an up and coming independent artist and you're dealing with industry people who are in a position to affect your career, it's no longer okay to tolerate being disrespected. And I think women have to deal with this a little bit more than men sometimes, but men jump in, correct me if you think that's a false statement. But I just know, as women in the music industry, we have to tolerate, we have had in the past to tolerate things that we might not tolerate elsewhere. But you don't need to do that. You do not, there's nothing about needing to set aside your values or accept anything less than what you feel you deserve. Because honestly, the people who are going to affect your career or make a change, the right people will not, that won't be part of the picture. It'll be people that you really love working with and that you feel good working around. So you don't ever have to worry or be in fear that if you don't tolerate somebody mistreating you, that you're going to end your career and you can't move forward. That's just fear talking. Okay, 3, always be ready to give your pitch. Okay, what is a pitch? A pitch is basically communicating information. So you guys have heard of the term elevator pitch? What an elevator pitch is? It's basically a term that basically it means, what could you say to somebody on a ride in an elevator that short, right? If you have that opportunity. And so being really good at your pitch is an art form, because being really good at pitching yourself in 30 to 60 seconds without sounding like you're selling anything is an art form. So basically, what is a pitch? A pitch is who are you, what do you do, and and why are you at that situation or the conference, wherever situation you're in. And really, though, it boils down to who are you and what do you do, and finding a really creative way of saying that in a memorable way, and not sounding like you're selling anything. So I've included a link in this document that has a really long, really cool article about how to develop your elevator pitch. So you kind of you have it at the ready, and you know how to do that when the opportunity arises. Okay, so always be ready. If somebody asks you, "What do you do? Why are you here?" Be ready to answer that. In a concise way that's really focused. Number 4, ask questions and listen. Listen, 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 listen. We are not really taught how to listen unless you grew up in a family that was super functional and everybody knew how to do that right from the get-go. Most of us don't learn how to listen. So what we tend to do is we're hearing somebody talk and they make a point, and we're already formulating our response. And the minute we start doing that, we're no longer listening to what's being said. So, so active listening is a skill. So active listening is where you are really absorbing all of the information. You're not formulating your response, and you are taking what's been said and you're creating a touch point of connection. So somebody says, oh, hi, it's nice to meet you. I don't know, the weather's been so beautiful, these days, over the weekend, wasn't it gorgeous? How was your Thanksgiving? And so you would take what was said to you, and in an active listening scenario, you would touch and connect on something that was said. So yes, my goodness, the weather was absolutely beautiful. I got to see the fall colors. I went for a drive, blah, blah, blah. So active listening creates this touch point of connection where you're really absorbing everything the person said, and you're kind of regurgitating it in a way so the person feels heard, that you heard what they said, and then you carry it to the next level of whatever you're communicating. So again, we could do like a 20-hour course on active listening, but if you look it up, it's a really fascinating skill, and it's super important to create authentic connections. So listening is so key. The other little tip too is remembering. And I laugh every time I say remembering because I have like no short-term memory. So I really have to work hard at the skill, but it's really important. So when you have a connection with somebody and you have a great conversation and you feel good about it and you're like, yeah, it was really great, try to remember one thing about that conversation. Make a note of it. We have devices now. There's no excuse not to make a little note and say, okay, Joe the record man, we spoke by the shrimp cocktail table, and he has 2 daughters. So when you go to reach back out to Joe the record man, you can reference one thing that you spoke about. And so, and make it a touch point. So you say, hi, Joe, the record man. My name is so-and-so. We spoke briefly at the FMO conference by the shrimp cocktail. I hope your daughters, had a lovely Thanksgiving, or you had a lovely Thanksgiving with your daughters. I was wondering if maybe you had time to talk this week, or blah, 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 whatever it is. So by remembering something about that conversation, not only does it help the person remember who you are, which is super important, it makes them feel like they were heard, that you took the time, it wasn't just surface or fluff. And it really doesn't take much to do that. Just one little piece of information, something personal about them, but in an authentic way. Pick something that makes sense for you. So I have 7 kids. So being a mom of 7 kids is like a thing. So I, of course, would gravitate to any piece of information about children or family because that's how I'm wired. So don't reach for something that doesn't feel like you, or you're just like remembering, I'm supposed to remember something about this person and make it random. Pick something that really is in alignment with who you are and what you are all about as well, so that there's authenticity in all the stages of it. Ask for help. Networking, asking for help is good, is okay. And when you're networking with somebody or connecting with somebody who has the potential to help you, it's okay to ask for help and just be real. Nobody's expecting you to like wander around and be like, I've got everything figured out. I know what I'm doing. It's okay to ask for help. Utilize the online presence. So your online presence and all of these amazing tools that we have. So LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. For LinkedIn is a really good tool for connecting from a business standpoint and networking. So be aware that be conscious that all of your online presence also is communicating consistently, no matter what the platform is. You want to make sure that the impression you're hoping to have is what's coming through on all of your platforms. And use these platforms to do your research on the people you're trying to connect with, and learn the etiquette on each of these platforms. And which ones are Instagram, I find, interestingly enough, depending on the generation, like the messaging in Instagram is actually a really great way to make connections, business connections, more so than I ever really thought. It's much more common in the younger generations. The older ages, LinkedIn seems to be more of the go-to to send a message and connect on there. And then of course email, if you do have the person's email. Do your homework. Just another reminder to do your homework. Really know who you're talking to, what they do, and what you have to offer them. And then stay in touch with your network. Like really working your network and managing your network. Create there's nothing wrong with creating a little email list. BCCing everybody's emails is good, because sharing people's emails, if they haven't given permission to do that, is you shouldn't, if you have the opportunity not to. And give them updates through email. Don't inundate them, but really, and touch base with your network and check in on them, whether it's artists, whether it's industry people that you're trying to build your team with. It's okay to stay in touch with your network. Try not to, when you're creating authentic connections, you're hoping for a longer term relationship, and not just, this is what you can do for me right now in this moment, and then once I get it from you, I'm done with you, I'm moving on. Right? That's not authentic. You really want to nurture those relationships. So whether it's you see them at the next industry event, or you think of them in a conversation, you send them a little note. It's easier now than ever to send messages, a little note. Like, hey, Joe, the record guy, I was talking to Bob, the publisher dude today, and we thought of you because he was mentioning XYZ, and I just hope you're having a great day. That's simple. No ask, no nothing, just, hey, you were on my mind today. People are still people. Humans love that stuff. You would love it. People love that, as long as you're not taking too much of their time. Okay. Any questions so far? Comments, questions, anything else to add, offer? Rachel?
I'm not hearing Rachel. Is anybody hearing Rachel?
Yeah,
I don't
no,
know
it
what's
can't.
happening.
You're unmuted, but we can't hear you. It's not coming through.
No, no plus.
Okay, we'll let you sort that out when we hear you. We'll jump back to you. Anybody else have something to add? A question, comment? Patrick.
Uh, awesome, Tara. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's not just about networking, it's about sales. Thank you for all the advice. So first time at the FMO, it is there like a list of the show buyers? Is there pictures? It'll be the first time I'll meet some of them. How do we recognize in the crowd while we're walking around and all that? Any advice on that?
It's a great it's a great question. Yes, there is. I laugh because do you ever see the movie The Devil Wears Prada? Anybody see that movie with Meryl Streep? And she
Yes,
has
but
her
I'll never admit it. Yes.
Your secret is safe with us here.
Right now.
She goes to these huge events and she has her two Emilys, the two girls, her assistants, who have to study those big binders. And then as the person's approaching, they whisper in her ear who it is. And it always makes me, I feel like we all need those Emilys walking around with us at these conferences, because it is hard to keep straight. So yes, there's usually a whole list of delegates that you can usually find on the FMO website. Mel could probably, after this, send you a link to show where that list is. You may have to do a little bit of cross-referencing for images. Sometimes their faces are there, sometimes they're not, but they should be pretty easy to find with the right keywords in Google. And then also at the site itself, people usually wear their name tags pretty visibly if the conference has done a good job. But their faces and stuff would be in the delegate list, or just a quick Google search on them. You'd find that. But it's smart.
And yes, 100%, folkmusicontario.org/delegates. I put it in the chat, but for anyone who is not on Zoom and is listening after the fact and still wants to know, that's where you find the list of delegates. It doesn't have their photos there, but quick Google search, you'll be able to, you can even I've seen people print themselves a list with all their Google photos. Like you can create yourself your whole own program in Canva if you wanted to. But yeah.
Go creepy on the thing. Yeah, got it.
Go creepy. Go creepy. Not too creepy, just a little creepy.
Just professional creepy.
Merci, Patrick.
Merci.
See. Do you have sound now, Rachel? No, it's still.
No.
Shannon did put in her comment in the chat.
Okay. Things I find most difficult is the elevator pitch. Yeah, I know. I'm such a good listener that I forget to talk about myself. I can so relate to this. Absolutely. So, okay, so it's kind of like the art of balancing too. When you're in a conversation with somebody, sometimes there is no obvious place to kind of jump in and be like, okay, let's talk about me now. So it's like, enough about you, let's talk about me. So there is a whole skill, and you learn this in media training. And Anne-Marie, maybe this is a great idea for like a workshop or something, is so the skills you learn in media training when you're being interviewed, you would use the same skills when managing a conversation. So media training is the art of taking any question that's thrown at you and spinning it to make sure you're on message and you stay on message all the time. So it's the same idea. So when you're in a conversation with somebody, well, first remembering that you matter and that what you have to say about yourself matters and is important, and probably the other person would enjoy hearing about it. And then it's about how to manage the conversation. And so, finding points of commonality and learning to pull it back to yourself. So, that can be anything. That could be, a song somebody's talking about, and you could say, well, oh, that reminds me of this song that I wrote about a tree house that's on my latest record, which I just dropped on March whatever, and that kind of thing. So it's about the listening and then learning how to pivot in a conversation so you can steer the conversation and get your message heard with that person. But it is a skill. So I think for this conference, just remember that you need to talk about you at some point and not get lost in all the other people's conversations. And then the thing is if it doesn't happen naturally, reach out to that person after. So make notes every day. Take like 5-10 minutes and just do a little brain dump. Because you're not going to remember. If you believe you're going to remember 5 days later when you get home, unless you have super brain power, you're not going to remember. So make notes at the end of every day. I spoke to so-and-so, Yeah, I forgot to mention that I have a record out or whatever. And then that's a great, way to reach out to them and say, I really enjoyed our chat. It was great. And I thought maybe based on, this XYZ thing you said, you might want to hear my music or something like that. A couple of points about this. Don't send music unsolicited to anybody ever these days, because there is a vulnerability for people who are receiving music, and I say this as a publisher and a label. We don't open music that's sent to us unsolicited, because you are creating a vulnerability to then have somebody come back to you later and be like, hey, I heard this song on the radio and 16 bars of it sound exactly like the song I sent you on September 6th. and clearly you had it, so your artist just copied my song and they released it. That kind of thing. So always ask permission before sending music. The other thing this is making me think of is, don't hand anybody anything at these conferences. I can tell you, as an industry, as well, we're all industry people. I hate those titles, but as a publisher and a label myself, I often am approached by artists with stuff. They give me a CD or a piece of merch and stuff, which is a beautiful sentiment, but I don't want to be carrying that around with me for the rest of the day. And anybody who knows me knows I hate carrying a purse. I don't even like carrying a purse. So it's cumbersome to hand people things. So don't do that. Conversation is everything, is best, and then follow up later. Okay, because it's rare that they're even going to listen to your album or CD unless they have a reason to. And that is not because they're mean people or cold people. It's because everybody working in this industry is so oversaturated on every level all of the time. There is never enough time to keep up with everything. So just running whatever organization they're running, they are at max plus. So the time it would take to listen to your music or check you out and stuff like that, they have to choose it. It's not going to happen by accident or just because they're sitting around not doing anything. It's just not the nature of how it works. They have to have a reason to. And to have a reason to, they have to have an emotional connection with you. The best way to have an emotional connection with somebody is to connect in person at these conferences in the ways we spoke about, and just be interesting to them as like you're going to solve problems for them. If you get a mindset that what you do is going to solve a problem for someone. So for a festival buyer, you're going to make their show amazing. That's solving a problem for them. If it's a record label and your music is making money, yeah, you want to go reach out to that label because you're going to solve a problem for them. The problem being increasing income, revenue. Okay, so think about it that way and don't hand people stuff. I know it's heartbreaking and people always want to like share who they are and stuff, but do it not when they're walking around the conference. Any other questions or comments?
I think it's so interesting, Tara. That's something that I had never even considered, that handing somebody some of your music could be unsafe for you as an artist, if somebody ripping something off, or put somebody in a weird position. I've never even considered that.
If it's unsolicited, yeah, I've heard many cases. This comes really from this conversation is more common in the Nashville publishing circles. And it's really become a thing where it's like, don't send me anything. And people actually send the message, your email was not opened, this music was not listened to, just so there's a record.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. There was
very interesting.
There was an incident, quick story. I was pitching, my songs were being pitched to a producer, and the publisher said, okay, so here's a song from a Canadian writer. And the guy said, no Canadians, I hate Canadians. So this was, and the publisher was like, I'm sorry, what? And then he went into this whole lawsuit thing, this conversation. This is one of dozens of stories that I could say, but basically some songs were sent over email, and then it led to a lawsuit by these Canadian writers. And so that's an extreme example, but it's just good etiquette to always ask permission now.
Yeah, amazing. Patrick, as-tu une autre question?
Yes, sorry.
No problem,
Yeah.
Get in there.
Oh, obviously, first time there. I'm trying to be practical. So we get into the Hyatt in London, or the hotel in London, Ontario. How do you walk the room? Like, we have an official showcase. How do you walk the room? How do you provoke interest? Obviously, I have an idea, but what would be your thoughts on it?
Great question. What kind of music do you do? Like, I know obviously it'll touch on folk, but
so let's say rock, folk, a mix of Great Big C and rock and roll. Let's rock.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. And you have an official showcase.
Correct.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So the first thing I would say to you is, let your music do the work for you.
Yes.
because the people that matter and that are looking for talent, they will find you. They won't miss it. So that's
Right.
the first thing, is to trust that your show, your showcase, and the music, your showmanship, put your creative energy into that and make sure that that just communicates like who you are and how it's going to be. You're going to make it easy for the promoters to sell your show. Okay.
Right.
So put it there first. And then how you walk the room, how you are in the room. So make sure you're always dressed like an artist. And I know that seems like a silly thing, but it matters. So when you are walking around these conferences as an artist, be dressed like an artist. It doesn't have to be super glam like when you're on stage, and in the folk world it's more subdued anyways, but there are key things that artists will wear that signal they're an artist. So whether that's leather bracelets, it can be a certain hat, it can be, I don't know, there's a vibe that an artist gives with their clothing, and it's really important. And I
So I have to
yeah.
go to Value Village tomorrow. Got it. I hear you. Yeah, I know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It can be exhausting too. And again, I'm laughing because I want to be in yoga pants and flip flops all day, every day, forever. So when I'm going somewhere as a label exec or as an artist, it's different, and what you wear is a bit different. So always have that little bit of flair, and then really walk the way you would walk anywhere in life. And just as you're walking through the room, just the power of thought is really powerful. And just say, you belong there. You belong there. You are the reason this conference exists. Without any of the artists there, without the music creators, the entire system collapses. So think about it. We're so backwards in our thinking in the entertainment industry. We think record labels are so powerful, and festival promoters are so powerful, and venue bookers are so powerful, and da da da. But it's an inverted triangle, and at the point at the bottom is holding all of it together. It's holding all of it up. It's the music creator. You can take away booking agents, you can take away labels, you can take away publishers, you can take away venues, and the system still works. There's still people making music. But if you take away the music creator, nothing else exists. It completely collapses. So remind yourself that I'm a music creator, and that is a special thing. That is an incredible superpower that you have. And you're just looking not for somebody to validate you or to give you credibility. You're looking for people to build a team with, not to give your power away to, but to build a team with. So if you can have that sort of rolling around in your head, and most of all, have fun. Like really have fun, and look for the artists that would be good to work together on a double bill with. Go and watch other artists, celebrate them, cheer them on, and just, have fun with it. Try not to stress out.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'm adding Shauna Cassidy to the conversation. I wasn't sure if you wanted to touch on that or if you had something else to say, Shauna.
No, I had a question about something you said earlier, Tara, about holding space for someone when you're talking to them and not looking over their shoulder at somebody that you're, someone else who might be more important. I've definitely done that before in the past. What I'm curious about is I've been in many of these conferences where you're talking to people like in a hallway and there's just chaos going on all around you. What I find really difficult is when I am talking to someone and then other people interrupt, which I've also been that person before. How do you manage that conversation that you want to be having in the middle of kind of a crowd where other people, that just like want to see you because they haven't seen you in 3 years and they're your friends and, of course you want to see them, but you're trying to like hold this attention in one place for a moment. How do you do that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it is total chaos always. And I have been both the person on both sides of that thing. So I think the first thing is to step back and sort of realign the expectations. So what is actually possible in this circus zoo, total chaos environment? What is actually possible? And then the second thing to remember is we remember how somebody makes us feel. That's the only thing somebody's going to remember from your conversation with them, really. We remember how people treat us and how we feel. So that really is more important than anything else. So if you're having a conversation with somebody and it's an engaged conversation and you're getting your opportunity and you're thinking this person's going to remember who I am and maybe they'll book me for their festival or whatever. And, Judy comes bouncing along and is like, hey, and interrupts the conversation. How you react to that is going to feed into the impression and the connection with the person you were talking with. How you handle that is also going to be remembered. So grace, always handle it with grace. And remember that it's community above everything. And so making a connection with that person or making them feel welcome and always being warm about it is going to go so much further. Because really, if you look at it, it's the fear of missing that opportunity that gets us feeling either frustrated or like, oh God, and so anytime you're making a decision from fear or you're feeding into the fear, that's an illusion. That's a lie. So if you're talking with that person and 5 people interrupt and then the person's like, gotta go, so sorry, it was great chatting with you. And you're like, oh, I missed my chance. You didn't miss your chance. Because based on how you accepted the people coming in and how you managed those interruptions. And that's a great point to then reach out to that person and be like, hey, Fred, remember we were trying to have a conversation in the hallway and then those 5 people interrupted? Well, this is the thing that I was hoping to tell you, da, 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 da. So you turn it into something that you can use to open the door. Hopefully that was helpful. Keith, see your hand up?
Okay, I'm just simply a songwriter themselves, and what I've done, I paid professionals to sing and record my album, and they had bought into it at that time because they really thought the message what I needed and would go out there. Now the only problem is they're so busy. They released their 4th album, and they won't be able to play my songs. But I want to be able to get there. So how do I go to a conference as only a songwriter or even a promoter? They want to talk to the songwriter as well as the singer and as well anybody else in the band. And I'm at a disadvantage on that. So how do I do something like that to actually get it through? Because these are top people that have sang and they really like it. It says a message for everybody. But how do I get people to actually listen and let the songs do the talking for me?
Great questions in there, Keith. So as a songwriter, you would really want to focus as far as networking goes and how to build your network. The people you really need to network are artists who are looking for outside songs because you would be offering outside songs, and also publishers. Publishers is really, that's the piece of your network that you would need, because the publisher will be able to connect your songs with artists looking for outside songs as well. So I would focus your networking plans or strategy on other artists and just introducing yourself as a songwriter and saying, these are the kind of songs you write. Have some kind of business card that links to examples of your work. Mm-hmm. And then conversations with publishers would be really helpful to you. As far as the reference to the other artists who lent their voice and talent to making a recording of your songs, you could use those examples of your work. But as a songwriter, the vehicle you need the most is the voice that's going to bring your stories into the world. And those are other artists. So I would go to showcases, I would go check out artists, I would listen to what they're doing and kind of feel out if what you write and the style you write in is a good fit for that artist. Mm-hmm. And then make notes on that and either meet them on site or send them an email later and connect and say, hey, I'm Keith. I was at FMO. I heard your showcase and you did a song about a willow tree and it was so beautiful. It reminded me of this song in my catalog. And I'm just wondering if I could send you some of my music in case you're looking for outside songs. And that's how you would kind of work your way into relationships with artists.
Yeah, okay. Because when I first, I went to a publicist or a promoter. Publisher? And what they, somebody that actually will take it and they'll advertise it. I'm not sure what you call them.
Oh, advertise a sound recording, like a recording of your song?
Yeah, the whole album, and go across Canada to different people to sort of distribute to radio, to whatever it is. The only problem with them that they said they would sort of do it, but unless you have the actual singer there, and you really can't go very far. They would do it, and whatever the cost would be, I'm not sure, but it sort of let me down a little bit on that particular patient. But what you're saying is not only that particular one, to actually go and find out where do you get a fit.
Yeah. So on the issue of there being a sound recording out there and a promoter and stuff like that, that's a longer conversation that I'm happy to have with you one-on-one after the
Mhm.
session's over, Keith, because there's
Okay.
more information about that you probably need. But from a networking standpoint at FMO, focus on artists and publishers is who you need to talk to. But I can give you some more information on what happened with that recording.
Okay,
Okay?
great, thanks.
No problem.
Well, thanks everybody. It's a couple minutes after 6. Does anybody have anything to add before we wrap it up nicely? And the next time we see each other is in person, God willing, and the creek don't rise, on Thursday. Tara will be there. Tara and I are on a panel actually about work-life balance, which is happening on Friday at 3 p.m. Anne Marie also will be on site. So this
I
is our
also
little.
have a panel, actually, I wanted to mention that I'm on a panel on Saturday at 2:30 about what's your story. And so we're going to be talking about, you've got an album or what, so how are you going to tell your story? And a big part of my presentation was small. It's an interactive workshop for anyone who's interested, but I will be talking about the elevator pitch. So it's a really cool thing, that knowing your key messages, knowing your story, and it could be your story just about this particular album, but have it figured out, like what is it that you want to tell people. And the elevator pitch is the best practice for any of that. So if you want to hear more about that, Saturday, I think at 1:30 on Saturday.
Great. I
Awesome.
just want to address one last comment here before we go. There's a question about how do you handle the internal feeling of intimidation when you're introducing yourself to a group of people that you perceive are already very established in the industry? Okay. So the feeling of intimidation, what you need to do to disarm that or shift it is figure out what are you afraid of? Because a negative emotion is usually rooted in fear, is always rooted in fear. So if you're feeling intimidated, that's a negative emotion. So what is it that I'm afraid of? Am I afraid that, is it rejection I'm afraid of? Am I afraid of making a fool of myself? Therefore, I will be rejected. Am I afraid of, you have to walk yourself through what am I afraid of? And when you face whatever it is for you, and you think, okay, well, I'm afraid of being laughed at. People don't laugh at people at conferences, but let's say I'm afraid of being laughed at. Okay, well, walk through it. Walk through that fear. Well, what happens if they laugh at you? Does it change your life in any way? No. It only changes your life if you give other people the power to. So when you face your fear and you look at it, you say, okay, well, that's not realistic. Is it really realistic that I'm going to be laughed at? No. So do I really have a feeling, do I have a reason to feel intimidated? No. And so why am I wanting to connect with these people? Because I really believe in the music I'm doing, and I think these people are a good match for me. Then find your courage in that thought, in your why. Why are you wanting to be introduced to that group or introducing yourself to that group? And it could be as simple as because Mike said networking was good. That could be your answer. But anytime you feel a negative emotion like intimidation, find out what you're afraid of and then face it.
So good, Tara. So good. Thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom, all of your willow wisdom.
No problem. My pleasure.
I just want to remind everybody that FMO has gone paper free this year, so there are no posters. I would imagine that the ad buys are probably expired by now, but there are digital boards where there are advertising sort of things happening. So if anybody wants to know, like, where is the schedule, what's happening, it's all on folkmusicontario.org. So they're using that as their app kind of thing. So if you're curious as to the schedule, all of the information is on there. I want to thank you guys so much for coming. Thank you everybody for being here. Thank you, Ontario Creates. Thank you, the City of Ottawa, for making this happen. And thank you, of course, to Folk Music Ontario, who we love so much, which is why we are getting together and really excited to see everybody in person. Just take, if you haven't done already, scroll through, all of the folks that are in this room. Actually, if I just remove the spotlights, I think that'll work. And so you can see everyone. There we go. Thank you. So have a look. These are your people. A lot of these people have been on every call. So if you don't know each other already, I'm sure you guys will have a big reunion once you guys get to the conference. So these are your safe people. This is your safe place. So please do connect with everybody, and let people know that that you had a great time connecting with folks at the Mike Free FMO workshops. We're trying to get Mike on the map. So feel free to let people know what's happening, and if you enjoyed the workshops, spread the word.
And all the
Thanks.
best to everyone who's has a showcase coming up. I see quite a few faces here, people that will be featured. So we'll make sure we come around and support. Look forward to meeting you in person for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you, Anne Marie, who is a board member as well at OMIC and is a radio host. Thank you, Tara Shannon, for all of your great wisdom today. Thank you, Kareem, for organizing this and helping us with all of the back end of this stuff. And thank you, Ellie Akeem and Irfan, who are also OMIC staff members. And so we will see everybody on Thursday. Super excited. Talk to you soon.
Bye, everybody.